Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be talking about how Xenons use cooldown hats. But first I'm going to be talking about what a cooldown hat even is and how it works. This is an example of a cooldown hat. This one is a -4 cooldown. And then what it means is that every cooldown that you have that is above 10 seconds specifically will get reduced by 4 seconds. And if it's at 10 seconds or below, it will be reduced by 5% per second. In this case, this is -4 times 5%, it'll be 20%. Right? Now, which skills get affected by cooldown hat specifically? First is this one, Hexa Beam Dance, but specifically the passive Memory Dance that activates every 10 seconds and just does some damage, right? That's all it does. Second one is Hexa Execute, which is another passive that activates every 8 seconds instead. And that one also gets reduced by cooldown hat. And then lastly, and most importantly, is Photon Ray. Photon Ray is one of your V skills that works in an interesting way. You activate it. Right now, I'm going to activate it, and it's going to start having these marks. It's not doing any damage yet, but it starts charging, quote unquote, and it starts putting more and more marks on the boss, on the enemy, whatever it may be. And once this duration ends, it will either disappear, and if you use it before, it'll release all these like little balls that do a bunch of damage, right? So the reason why this is important to have its cooldown reduced is for a strategy that Xenons use in the late game mostly. It's a little bit sweaty. It's called double photon. What this allows you to do is to release 2 photon rays within your burst, basically. But what you do is you pre-charge it, you activate it early, right? And if you don't have a cooldown hat like I do, like in my case, I don't have a cooldown hat, you're gonna wait until you have about 3 seconds left. And then you're gonna pop your buffs, your burst buffs, right? So 7, 6, 5, right? Waiting. And then I'm gonna do my burst, whatever it may be, right? Blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna have just enough time to charge it again, right? I'm gonna have just enough time to charge it again. I'm gonna use it, blah, 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 and I'm gonna use it, right? And then boom. And then it fit in my burst. The Roar 5 makes it a little easier, but mainly you're trying to get it within the Last Resort, the Overdrive, and all your burst buffs, basically, right? So that's basically how double photon works. What cooldown hat does is it reduces the cooldown, obviously reduces the cooldown of photon ray, which makes it easier to time, because the cooldown that has been reduced will give you a bigger window to activate it again, right, within your burst buffs. So instead of being 3 seconds, it will be a slightly larger window, right? So in that way, there's a quality of life aspect that gets improved by having a cooldown hat. Not so much with -2. -2 does benefit you, but -4 is better, right? And then also, you know, you are sacrificing 2 lines of all stats, but they also get, even if you don't do double photon, you do get a little bit of your money's worth with these 2 skills. And also, because the cooldown is reduced of photon ray, you can do, if you do it off cooldown and you don't really care about min-maxing all this stuff with photon ray, you can just use it off cooldown, and then over time you'll have more activations of photon ray. So that's how it benefits you, right? So in short, you can either, you know, be a little bit more sweaty, and it is a little bit better to just have a stat hat if you do it optimally. If you do, you know, double photon every single time, it is a little bit better, but the difference is not that big. So basically, if you're rolling your hat on your Xenon, don't worry too much about it. Whatever you roll, if you roll like a -2 or even a -4, that's great, right? You can still use it. You lose some damage, a little bit, but it will make your life so much easier. So don't, unless you want to be sweaty, if you get a -4 or -2, and you know, and with a good combination with the other lines, I would just keep it, right? It is case by case, and it depends on what you prefer, right? What your playstyle is, how casual or sweaty you may try to be with it, right? That's basically it. That's the summary of how cooldown hat affects Xenons and how you can take advantage of it to do more damage or to have an easier experience with Xenon. So that's the TLDR. I am gonna have a section in the video later where I go over a bunch of numbers and I have an Excel sheet and all that, going over the percentages. Do keep in mind that getting a -4 with all stats is really expensive, way more expensive than getting a regular 3-line or even like a double prime 3-line. So trying to go for a -4 with all stats can be slightly better depending on how active you are and how much you do double photon, but it's a lot more expensive. So if you're going for it, just be warned. But yeah, I'm gonna be going over the mathing a little bit. If you don't really care about that, then I will see you later. Alright, now that we went over the basics, let's get into a bit more advanced stuff. Do some numbers here. So as you can see here, I have a list of potentials and a list of percentages that represent the damage, gain, or loss of each potential. I use 24% all stats as a baseline, not because I expect every Xenon that exists to have that, but I just had to pick something that's to serve as the 0%. Just keep in mind that obviously you do lose some damage for every line of all stats that is another stat, even if it's strength, dex, or luck. I want to say for me I lose about 0.2 to 0.3% FD per every line of 7% all stats, for example. That becomes 10% dex or something, right? And if you have a double prime all stats, so 10, 10, and then like 10% of dex or something, it is about equal to 3-line all stats. But that's besides the point. So with this as a baseline, I used my scouter to plug in some skill cooldowns, and these are the numbers that I got. So as you can see, -1 second is worse by about 0.4%, and then -2 is about the same. It's slightly worse in Scouter than 10% all stats. Now keep in mind that Scouter is looking at not just overall damage, but it's also looking at a main cut, a 30-minute run of a boss. When you're looking at whether you can clear a boss or not, it's gonna go off of, like, if you have -4, if you have -2, it's gonna take into account that you can play perfectly, you can get that last burst day. So take it with a grain of salt. I would say 10% all stats is better than -2, but -2 is a bit better than 7% all stats, right? So something like this would be a slight damage gain, right? And then these are just more percentages. Keep in mind that this one specifically, -4 with 7% all stats, costs about 490 bill. Right? So a lot of these, especially because it's all stats is by default harder to get than a stat line. Some of these potentials are gonna run you a lot of money, a lot of mesos, right? So keep that in mind. This is the formula for cooldown reduction. Pretty simple, as I kind of explained it before. And these are the cooldowns. These are the base cooldowns right here with no Merc Legion and no cooldown hat. And then I'm breaking down how much they get reduced by each thing. Right, 9.4%, 9.4 seconds with Merc Legion, right? Because it's -6%. -6% here, -6% here, right? So Merc Legion affects these 3 skills by -6%. But then when you go into the -2 and -4 hats, they still have the 6% from the Legion block. But also, as I said before, this is -2 hat times 5% -10%. So this 9.4 minus 10%, 8.46. Same thing here, 7.52 minus 10%, 6.77. And then in this case, because it's above 10 seconds, it's just gonna get reduced by -2, and then -4 here, right? So these are the cooldowns at -4, right? 7.52 for memory dance, and 6.02, basically 6 seconds for execute, right? So these are just some of the numbers to keep in mind when you roll a specific potential in a hat. I made this guide simply to answer the same question that gets asked a lot of times. I don't blame people for asking it. This is a really complex question, that's why I'm making this video. Hopefully this can be used as a reference for people to answer this very question. And yeah, if you like this video, I'm not gonna ask to subscribe or like. If you see me out in town in AFK in Talahard or training in a map, say hi to me, you know. I would appreciate it very much. So hey, I'll see you guys around. Peace.